Have you ever felt an unseen presence around you, even when you're completely alone? Welcome to a tale that will make your skin crawl and your hairs stand on end. A tale that begins with a woman, let's call her Jane, who started to notice something peculiar in her own home. Something that didn't quite belong. Jane, like any of us, was accustomed to the humdrum sounds of her living space. The creaking floorboards, the ticking clock, the wind whistling through the window gaps. But then, new sounds began to permeate her sanctuary. Unfamiliar, eerie noises that echoed in the silence of her solitude. Whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Faint footsteps in desolate corridors. Doors creaking open when no one else was around. But it wasn't just the sounds that disturbed her peace. Objects in her home started to shift on their own. A book would fall off a shelf. A chair would move slightly from its place. A picture frame would tilt on its own. These weren't mere coincidences, but signs of something more sinister. Something unseen, yet palpable. And then, there was this feeling. An uncanny sensation of being watched. It was as though eyes were fixated on her every move. The air around her would turn heavy. The silence would become deafening and a chill would run down her spine. She could feel it in her bones, a presence lurking in the shadows, unseen but not unfelt. Day after day, the signs became more frequent, more alarming. Jane was living in a state of constant unease, feeling trapped in her own home. The home that had once been her sanctuary now felt like a cage with an unseen captor. But Jane was not one to succumb to fear. She was frightened, yes, but her fear was outweighed by her determination. She decided that she would not be terrorized in her own home, that she would uncover the unseen presence that had turned her life into a living nightmare. The woman, frightened yet determined, decided to investigate what was causing these occurrences. And so, our tale of the unseen presence takes a darker turn as we move towards the investigation. Are you ready for what comes next? When faced with fear, would you choose to confront it? Our protagonist, a woman of resilience and curiosity, decided to do just that. She had always been a practical person, a woman of science, but there was something eerie happening in her home that defied logic. The strange happenings, those odd noises in the middle of the night, objects mysteriously moving, and the chilling sensation of being watched were all too real to be ignored. She decided to delve into the heart of this unexplainable mystery. She began to document everything, recording the seemingly mundane that turned eerie when the lights dimmed. She took note of each chilling whisper in the wind, each shadow that seemed to dance with a life of its own. This was her investigation, her attempt to rationalize the irrational, to put a name to the nameless dread that had taken over her home. But when science failed to provide her with answers, she decided to turn to the arcane. She brought in a psychic, a woman who claimed to see beyond the veil of the physical world. The psychic was a woman of age, her face etched with the wisdom and pain of a life lived in the shadows of the unseen. As she walked through the house, her face grew graver, her breath more ragged. The suspense was palpable as the psychic finally sat down, her eyes reflecting an unseen terror. "You're not alone," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "There is an entity in this house, a presence that does not belong." The psychic's words echoed in the silence that followed, confirming the woman's worst fears. She was not alone. Her home, her sanctuary, was invaded by an unseen entity, an entity that seemed to thrive in her fear. But the true horror was yet to come. The psychic's final words were a chilling premonition of what lay ahead, a warning that the woman's fight against the unseen entity was far from over. It was just the beginning of a battle against the shadows, a battle against the unseen. What if the unseen presence was something far more sinister than you could ever imagine? Picture this, a woman alone in her home, hearing strange noises, feeling an eerie presence, but never quite catching sight of what's causing her sleepless nights. Now, imagine if that unseen presence takes a form, a dark entity, a shadowy figure lurking in the corners, a terrifying specter whose intentions are far from benign. The dark entity becomes bolder, more aggressive. It no longer just lurks in the shadows, it manifests itself. The woman starts to see things move, objects flying across the room, doors slamming shut of their own accord. A chill permeates the air and an oppressive sense of dread fills the house. No longer a mere observer, the entity becomes a tormentor, a malevolent force causing physical harm. Scratches appear on the woman's arms, bruises form without any explanation. She wakes up in the middle of the night, gasping for breath, feeling as though a heavy weight is pressing down on her chest. Every moment in the house becomes a nightmare. Each tick of the clock, a countdown to the next terrifying encounter. The woman lives in perpetual fear, each day filled with suspense, each night a battle for survival against the unseen adversary. But what if the terror doesn't stop there? What if the dark entity is not just a random occurrence, but a part of something bigger, something far more malevolent? What if the woman's house is just one of many, each haunted by its own dark entity, each a chapter in a book of horror that's still being written? And so the woman finds herself living in her own personal horror movie, a living nightmare where the monster is real and escape seems impossible. But remember, this is just one tale, one story of many. She was living in her own personal horror movie, but this was just the beginning of our tales of terror. Would you dare to venture into a forest known for its eerie hauntings? Now, imagine a group of friends eager for adventure who decided to do just that. They sought the thrill of the unknown, a break from the monotony of everyday life. Little did they know, they were about to get more than they bargained for. Their destination was a forest steeped in legend, where shadows danced and whispers echoed. A place where tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena were as abundant as the trees themselves. As the sun began to set, they pitched their tents, their laughter echoing through the forest, unaware of the eyes watching them from the darkness. As the first night fell, the forest transformed. The chirping of crickets was replaced by an unsettling silence, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig. The friends huddled together, their earlier bravado replaced with a growing unease. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to move of their own accord. They started hearing strange noises, sounds that couldn't be explained by the wind or wildlife, a distant wail, a low growl, the crackle of dry leaves under unseen feet. Each sound was like a cold hand running down their spines, making them jump at their own shadows. The forest was alive, and it was watching them. Among the shadows, they saw figures moving, dark, shapeless entities that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. They were always at the edge of their vision, disappearing when looked at directly. It was as if the forest was playing a cruel game with them, toying with their fear. The friends huddled closer, their eyes wide with terror. The flickering fire seemed like the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. But as the night wore on, the fire started to dwindle and the shadows began to creep closer. As the night grew darker, so did their fear. As we leave them in the grip of the haunting woods, we wonder what horrors await them in the night. But that's a tale for another time. For now, the haunted forest holds its secrets close, whispering them only to the wind. What would you do if your worst nightmares came to life? Picture this. You're with a group of friends, huddled together for safety, as the eerie calm of the night is shattered by a chilling wind. The world around you is cloaked in a darkness so profound that it seems to swallow all hope. An unseen presence is felt, causing the hairs on the back of your neck to stand on end. Suddenly, the quiet is broken by the soft echo of a child's laughter. But there are no children present, just your group. The laughter grows louder, more malicious, and is soon joined by the sound of dragging feet. The tension in the air is palpable, a tangible force that constricts your lungs, making it hard to breathe. Out of the corner of your eye, you see a figure darting in and out of sight, a ghostly apparition that seems to be toying with your fear. A flickering light appears in the distance, drawing your eyes like a moth to a flame. The light grows brighter and brighter until it engulfs your vision. When you can finally see again, your surroundings have changed. The familiar has been replaced with the grotesque, with shadows that twist and contort in ways that defy logic. The air is filled with a cacophony of whispers, each voice more desperate than the last. The whispers turn into screams, the screams into pleas for mercy. It's as if you're hearing the anguish of 1,000 lost souls, their torment echoing through the night. You try to move, to run away from the nightmarish reality, but your legs refuse to obey. You're trapped in a world that defies reason, a world that seems to feed off your fear, growing more terrifying with each passing moment. You can't help but wonder, is this a dream, a terrifying illusion? But the cold dread that grips you is all too real. You're not dreaming, this is your worst nightmare come to life, a night of terror that seems to stretch on forever. They were trapped in a nightmare with no escape in sight. When survival is at stake, fear becomes your greatest enemy. Imagine being lost in a forest with a nameless horror hot on your heels. The rustling leaves whisper of danger, and every shadow seems to hide a lurking terror. Such was the predicament of our group of adventurers. Their hearts pounded like war drums in their chests, each beat echoing the urgency of their situation. They were running, stumbling through the dark undergrowth, their breath ragged, their minds filled with images of the dark entity they had encountered. It was a desperate race against an unseen foe, a chilling game of hide and seek where losing meant unthinkable horrors. The forest was a maze, and they were the unwilling participants thrown into its labyrinthine depths. The trees towered above them like silent sentinels, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers in the moonlight. The group's only guide was the sliver of moon that peeked intermittently through the dense foliage, casting long, eerie shadows that danced and swayed with their frantic movements. The terror that pursued them was relentless, an unyielding specter that fed on their fear. It was an embodiment of the forest's darkest secrets, a manifestation of the haunting wood's forgotten tales. Its presence was a cold wind that nipped at their heels, a chilling reminder of the dark entity that they had unwittingly awakened. The climax of their ordeal came in the form of a steep cliff, a precipice that stood between them and their escape. It was a leap of faith, a final stand against the terror that hunted them. One by one they jumped, each leap a testament to their will to survive. Their screams echoed through the forest, a chilling symphony of fear and determination. They escaped, but the haunting memories of that night would forever remain. The forest had let them go, but not without leaving its mark. Their escape was a victory, but it was also a reminder of the horrors that lurk in the unseen corners of our world, waiting for the unwary to stumble upon them. Are you ready to relive the most terrifying moments? Let's start by bringing back the chilling whispers of the unseen presence. The fear was not in seeing, but in feeling, a sense of dread that permeated every corner. The unnerving sensation of being watched, of knowing that something was lurking in the shadows, just out of sight. It was an invisible terror that sent shivers down our spines, a presence that was always there, always watching. The unseen presence indeed was a chilling reminder of the fact that not all horrors are visible to the naked eye. Next, we plunge back into the heart-pounding saga that was the investigation. The suspense was palpable as the truth slowly unraveled, revealing a reality far more sinister than any of us could have imagined. The cold shiver of dread as the clues fell into place, the growing realization of a dark truth that was far more terrifying than any ghost or ghoul. It was a journey that led us down a path of darkness, of secrets that should have been left buried. Now, let's revisit the spine-chilling tale of the dark entity. The embodiment of pure evil, an entity so dark, so malevolent, that it defied understanding. Its mere presence was enough to chill the blood, to make the bravest of hearts quiver in fear. It was a malevolent force that haunted our nightmares, a dark specter that lurked in the deepest corners of our minds. The dark entity, a symbol of the horrifying reality that sometimes the monsters are real. Then we found ourselves lost in the haunting woods, the eerie silence, the whispering trees, the chilling sense of isolation. It was a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred, where every shadow held a lurking fear. The haunting woods were a testament to the terror that can be found in the most ordinary of places, a reminder that fear can take root anywhere, and who could forget the night of terror? The long hours of darkness filled with heart-stopping moments, the relentless fear that made every minute feel like an eternity. It was a night where the shadows came alive, where the silence was broken only by the echoes of our own fears. It was a night that reminded us that sometimes the most terrifying things are those that we imagine. Finally, the breathless suspense of the escape. The race against time, the desperate struggle for survival, the adrenaline-pumping fear that every second could be the last, the relief of escape that was always just out of reach. It was a thrilling climax that left us on the edge of our seats, a finale that reminded us that sometimes the only thing scarier than the horror is the escape. Remember, these tales of terror are a reminder that sometimes the things we fear the most are the things we can't see.